The international community has blatantly remained indifferent to the TPLF's recent attacks against the Ethiopian government. And this is going on against the backdrop of misinformation and disinformation being pumped from every side. And why are they remaining so silent? And what are they gonna get out of all this? Ladies and gentlemen, this is Addis Dialogue. We're going to talk about this and other related issues, and my guest today is Lawrence Freeman. He is a very well-known political economic analyst for Africa. So do stay with us. And Mr. Freeman, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Now, again, we are going back to the issues of misinformation and disinformation following this TPLF-induced war. We're also hearing about some Western media outlets pumping their fictional narratives simply because they are reporting from outside Ethiopia, not caring even to see the realities on the ground. It's like going round and round in a maze, so to speak, a maze of misinformation and disinformation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what are some of your observations in this regard?
I gather you're discussing the CNN report.
Yeah.
That is now, being circulated in terms of being released today or the next few days. Look, the thing that I find people have trouble understanding is that you have sections of the media that are part of, and they deploy by, or actually in some cases they deploy with the establishment, with the geopolitical establishment that is trying to dictate to the world that everybody must follow their rules-based order. And I think that people don't understand the CNN is not an actual journalist media operation. They are part of political intelligence, political deployment. And as I've said to some of my friends here in Washington, they are the enemy. They are part of the enemy. They deploy as part of the enemy. So people should not treat them as they're making some mistake in their reporting. They're using, and we got together back in December of last year, constant disinformation as a tool to weaken the Ethiopian population and the government when they were reporting an immediate attack on Addis, when of course there was no fear of that. And now they're doing the same thing. Think back to the beginning of the conflict, very early on.
Yeah.
Actually, in the days and weeks in November of 2020, after the first military attack by the TPLF, immediately, within days, what popped up, primarily initiated by CNN, was there's genocide going on in Tigray. There's genocide within days. There's ethnic cleansing going on. There's sexual violence as a weapon. Now, all three of those charges, and now almost 2 years, going on 2 years, have never been proven. In fact, they've been denied by even the United Nations as untrue. Yet they circulated and became the, quote, political intelligence, unquote, that was used by the Western world to pound the Ethiopian government and support the TPLF. And we saw this very clearly. And I must say, I was very sad to see it happen. But Secretary of State Blinken, who came in with the administration of President Joe Biden, without any intelligence from the State Department, without any intelligence from the CIA or the Defense Intelligence Agency, DIA. Nevertheless, the State Department and the press spokesman for the State Department, Ned Price, and the President of the United States, Joe Biden, repeatedly babbled genocide, ethnic cleansing. So why do you have public officials heading the most powerful government in the world repeating stuff that is not true, was not proven then, is not proven today? because that's the way the geopolitical establishment operates. And they have very strong influence in every government going back decades, and they have, but especially in this government. And right now, when people approach CNN, they should understand that they're dealing with the enemy of the people of Africa in general, as I've seen CNN coverage, but in this particular case, the enemy of the nation state of Ethiopia, the enemy of the Ethiopian people. And if you don't treat them and understand them in that way, you will be making an error.
Talking about CNN, as you said, it's continued its misinformation, disinformation, to the point of tarnishing the image of Ethiopia. It is also revealed that this media is gonna air its fabricated documentary against Ethiopia. So as such, they're trying to breach journalistic principles and also the truth. So I am curious here, why are they doing so at the expense of the truth and also at the expense of millions of Ethiopians, millions of innocent Ethiopians who are determined to get out of poverty?
First of all, they're not a journalist organization bending the truth. They are a political organization doing their job as part of a larger policy.
Mm-hmm.
What I realized very early on, I was the first one to realize this, is that the deployment of CNN and the babbling, repeating by our government, by the US government and other governments in Europe of the allegations, which had no truth, no foundation, never been proved, that was part of a geopolitical doctrine. There is a belief among a certain financial, political, oligarchical elite that they have to control countries throughout the world. And their number one job of this geopolitical doctrine, it's sometimes referred to as a zero-sum game, because they have to be on top. And for them to be on top, a plus, other countries have to be below, a minus, and that gives you your zero sum. This idiotic disease, geopolitical disease, believes that China and Russia are the number one enemies of the United States and the American people. I don't, they do. And they look at every deployment in Africa. They don't really care about the lives of 115 million Ethiopians. They don't care about what will it take to lift millions of people out of poverty.
Yeah.
They don't care about those questions. What they care about is maintaining geopolitical control. And they believe that the government under Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed and the Prosperity Party, and no longer under the control of the TPLF, is not sufficiently in line with their geopolitical control. And therefore, they want to make sure the government is either removed, that was their first plan, option A, is weakened. And it appears to me they're now on option C, which is to constantly disrupt and weaken the government of Ethiopia by constant permanent warfare from the TPLF. As long as the TPLF remained armed, and as long as they believe in their demented ethno-nationalist ideology that they are in charge of a nation called Tigray, which of course Tigray is part of the Republic of Ethiopia. It's not a nation, but in their demented national ideology, they believe it's a nation and they have a right to conquer other nations and disrupt and actually weaken the entire Horn of Africa, not just Ethiopia. So the CNN is not a news organization. I can't get this through the thinking of my friends in Washington, Ethiopian friends in Washington and in Ethiopia. They're not a news organization. They are an arm of a geopolitical establishment. They're not looking for the truth. They're looking to destroy, to weaken the government of Ethiopia, to deny the Ethiopian people the right to live in prosperous lives, lives with dignity and meaning, and not in poverty. So you have to forget this notion of them as a news organization and realize what they're out to do and what they're trying to accomplish. And they've identified themselves since the beginning of the war. So why do people still think they're a news organization? I don't. I'm not saying people shouldn't be interviewed by CNN, but when you're interviewed, know that you're dealing with the enemy and treat them as such and prepare yourself as such. And the Ethiopian government should attack CNN as the enemy and understand that they're an arm, a deployable arm of an international geopolitical oligarchical force. And if you don't understand that, then you're confused about what they're doing. I'm not confused. I see clearly what they're doing and I've been watching them for decades, but in Ethiopia for the last 2 years.
So part of their ploy being cooked up, I think, is the narratives that the National Defense Force is committing genocide. And we are also hearing reports that they are producing some documentary in this regard, now that Ethiopia is defending itself against the terrorist TPLF. So what should Ethiopia do in the midst of this media warfare, media campaign, including coming from different media outlets, including, of course, CNN, sir?
Well, the first thing is understand what's going on. Knowledge is the best weapon. And I find sometimes that this is not understood with people in the government. This is part of a larger deployment. Look at what is the TPLF going to do now? They're going to continue to make military campaigns into the rest of Ethiopia, right now, Afar and Amara. They may stop at a certain point and say, okay, we'll have a ceasefire. But then they will start up again. Because as long as they're armed, they are a danger to the nation state of Ethiopia. So as part of with the international community, if it had any morality and concern for the people of Ethiopia and for democracy, which actually elected the government of Abiy Ahmed, then they would make sure that a process has begun for disarming the TPLF. They have to be disarmed. They should be reintegrated into society. And Tigray has to be part, and all northern Ethiopia has to be rebuilt as part of a great economic infrastructure program for the country of Ethiopia. But if we don't disarm the TPLF, then they will continue to what I am referring to as permanent war. Attack, maybe retreat. Attack, maybe retreat. This is what I call the third phase, because they're not going to remove the government of Abiy Ahmed, but they're going to so weaken and destabilize the country that the country cannot move forward with its aspirations to eliminate poverty, which is what they're trying to do. And we see this with various programs, most especially the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. So the TPLF, the deployment of CNN and others, and the US government, to back up the TPLF by saying, well, the government has done this, the TPLF has done that. There's no equivalence. There's a famous speech that one of my heroes, Abraham Lincoln, made in 1858 when he was running for the US Senate, which he lost, by the way, before becoming president. And he said, a house divided cannot stand. Now, he was referring to the country being half slavery, half pro-slavery, and half anti-slavery. Well, we're not dealing with slavery, but we have the same concept. You cannot have a republic functioning for the general welfare of its people if there's a section of the country that's armed and is declared its objective to overthrow the government and to weaken the whole Horn of Africa. This is unacceptable. Now, if there was true democracy, or let me put it this way, if the Western countries, and my present Biden and Secretary of State Blinken, who babble about democracy every day, if they really believed in democracy, then they would be defending the democratic elected government of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, which they have yet to do. And they would be defending the policies of development for the people. So they don't believe in democracy, and they will not denounce and demand the disarming of the TPLF. My view is, and this is I know this is a harsh view, but as long as the TPLF remains armed, and as long as the great Western powers of Europe and the United States continue to give them tacit support, Ethiopia will be on the constant struggle to survive and will not be able to accomplish all the goals that it set for its people. So whatever this report says, I have no inside information. I have no idea what information they have, but it's an enemy deployment. And the question is, why hasn't the President of the United States, Joe Biden, why hasn't the Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, why hasn't the National Security Advisor, Blake, denounced this? This is, to me, a crime that they will not end this military deployment of TPLF against Ethiopia and the Horn of Africa.
Okay. Wow. Thank you for that wonderful explanation. Again, talking about the international community, we're still here observing that the international community is trying to appease the TPLF, by, turning blind eye to the calls of Ethiopia, and as such, it is emboldening the TPLF to keep on its destructive war and also narration and the misinformation, disinformation that we talked about. So tell me a little bit about the driving factors that you see here.
Well, look at Africa. I mean, Africa has been under 500 years of horrible anti-African policy. We have 400 years of slavery from the early 1400s to the mid 1800s. Then we had colonialism from the treaty in Germany that was arranged by Bismarck and Leopold of Belgium. And then we've had neocolonialism controlled by the international financial forces. And therefore, after independence of African nations in the 1960s, we had efforts for development led by people like Kwame Nkrumah, Patrice Lumumba, and others, including the leadership in Nigeria and other countries. Now, Ethiopia has emerged, I guess 150 years after the Berlin Conference, has emerged as a leading development nation, not just in the Horn of Africa, but in all of Africa, and has pursued policies of eliminating poverty. As it was one Ethiopian leader told me, we don't want to manage poverty, we want to eliminate poverty. And therefore, Ethiopia has played a very important role in leading other African countries as an example of what it does for itself to eliminate poverty for development. We saw that in the very bold move of establishing the Addis to Djibouti Railroad in 2016, when I was also there at the inauguration. We've seen that in their efforts now. They've had the third filling of the Ethiopian dam. Now, if you're a world dominated, if you're a superpower in the world that's trying to dominate the world and control countries for your benefit, not for democracy, not for development, but for geopolitical interests, then you want to control the leading countries. That includes Ethiopia, and most especially in Africa. How do we slow them down? How do we weaken so that there is not an independent nation in Africa fighting for development? And don't forget, Ethiopia has very close relations with China, has maintained close relations with Russia and other countries. And the United States, not the United States, because it's not in the United States' interest. There's geopolitical, oligarchical interests say, no, we want leaders to be submissive to our demands. We don't want people controlling a country like Ethiopia, the second largest populated country in Africa, that have independent thinking. We don't want Ethiopia to unite with Eritrea, to unite with Somalia. We don't want a strong Horn of Africa, because we want to control the Horn of Africa, because Africa has the waterways from the Indian Ocean to the Gulf of Eden to the Suez Canal, one of the most important waterways in the world. And we want to control what the geopolitical doctrinaires say. We don't want independent thinkers. We don't want Africans controlling it. We want to control it. We will accept Africans who do what we say, but we don't want any independent thinking Africans. We don't want any nationalists. Now, the United States had a very close working relationship with the TPLF for many years. And we have people in the United States government and very close to the United States government who are no longer there, but they've made themselves, they've exposed themselves, who had a very good working, they consider a good working relation with the TPLF. And they won't give it up. They say, well, you know, we can't have this. Don't forget, we have to respect the TPLF. They were the leadership of the country, and they were. And they got voted out in 2018. So that's the way countries move forward. But since then, the United States and the West in general has made clear that they want to maintain the TPLF as not only an ethnicity, because they actually want to keep ethnicity as the dominant culture in Ethiopia. They're not opposed to it like I am. They not only want to keep ethnicity, they want to have the TPLF armed. Where is the movement for disarmament and reintegration? Where is it? Who speaks about it? Who demands it? Now, the United Nations has designated the African Union to be the organization that coordinates the peace drive. TPLF objects. So right now, the United Nations is still being soft on the TPLF. And there are private discussions going on with the TPLF with the Secretary General, Gutierrez. I don't know what those discussions are. But Ethiopia is a member state of the United Nations. So I would like to know what discussions are going on with the Secretary General of the UN, with a group that is a belligerent against a member state of the United Nations, a belligerent. Same thing with Tedros of the WHO. The TPLF is a belligerent that has openly called for the overthrow of the government of Ethiopia and wants to also dismantle other nations in the Horn of Africa based on their ethnic nationalist perversion. When is that going to be denounced? When are we going to end this warfare, permanent warfare aimed against the state of Ethiopia and the people of Ethiopia?
The other issue that we're seeing is they're trying to put the blame on both the government and the TPLF, equating the government with the terrorist TPLF, and thus trying to apportion the blame, you know, on both sides. What's the error, the deliberate error that you see here, sir? Let me ask you this final. This is my final question.
Look, people have to understand the history of civilization. The nation state was a long process in coming into existence. We see traces of it going back to the 1400s with Nicholas Akuza, and then we see the 1648 Treaty of Westphalia, which codified the nation state. And then really the United States became the first true nation state in the late 1700s, and it's been spreading since then. But the nation state is organized by people. And what defines a human being is their mind. That each human being born, black or white, brown or yellow, has absolutely no difference where you come from. Each human being is born with a creative mind, a creative imagination. No animal, no computer, no other species has it. So we organize, us human beings, we organize the nation state as a vehicle to promote the interest of the human race, but we divide it up into nations based on culture and history. And all those nations have one common, united, universal theme: the nurturing and development of the minds and the well-being and the material standard of living of their people. So all nation states have actually the same purpose for existence, and therefore have a shared common purpose. Ethnicity is an attack on human beings. Ethnicity is an attack on the nation. Ethnicity says, no, you're not human. You're part of an ethnic group. And what defines you as part of an ethnic group? What bloodline you came from? Blood cells in our body, not your mind, but your blood, or where the piece of dirt that you grew up on. Those define you as human beings. Actually, they don't. That's an animalistic definition.
Wow.
So people are not defined by their ethnic grouping. Ethnicity undermines the human race anywhere it's promoted. Now, therefore, to equate the Republic of Ethiopia, every group in Ethiopia became part of the Republic. Now, there's a fundamental error in the Ethiopian Republican Constitution, which I identified many years ago, and everybody knows it. It identifies peoples, plural, nationalities, plural. That's the mistake. There is not plural. There's the Ethiopian people. There are Ethiopian citizens. There is not Ethiopian ethnic groups. The Republic, as my brilliant founding fathers formed the United States, the Republic is not an assembling of ethnic groups. The Republic stands for an idea, a purpose, a commitment to the future of those people and the future of civilization. So every single member of a republic is united in the commitments of development of themselves and their friends and neighbors, and actually the entire civilization. Ethnicity has no equivalence, none. In fact, ethnicity is an attack on the human race. It's an attack on the creativity of the human mind, because it substitutes biology and bloodlines for the process of creative thinking. And that, to me, is very clear. Most people don't see it that way. That's the problem. For me, it's very clear that ethnicity has to be resolved, has to be transcended. And we have to have a very long-term, it's going to take a while, robust, probably contentious discussion throughout every village and city in Ethiopia on what it means to be a human being and a citizen of Ethiopia, as opposed to being an animal conception under ethnicity.
Mr. Freeman, thank you so much for your usual cooperation and for the wonderful ideas that you've just raised. Thanks a lot.
Okay, my pleasure.
Well, dear viewers, with that, we come to the end of today's program. Thank you so much for having been with us so far. Till I see you next time with yet another program, it's goodbye from me.